Hello, and welcome back to The Voyage Within, the Prior Gypsies Landing podcast. I am so happy to have you here. On last week's episode, we explored the transition in my new name, and now this week, we get to talk about one of my favorite topics in the whole wide world, about traveling. I am so grateful for one of my listeners, Kayla, that suggested that I do an episode on this topic because she wanted to hear more about my experiences and my understanding around travel. If you don't know me, I have been traveling a lot for the last 10 years. I love traveling so much. It is one of my greatest passions and purposes. And I'm so grateful that I get to share these here with you today on this episode. As you listen to this episode, I will currently be in Iceland. I am leaving tomorrow to go back for my second time. So since I will be gone and off the grid the next week, I wanted to make sure that I recorded this for you before I left and then pre-schedule it to be released while I'm gone. How do you feel about travel? Have you traveled a lot? Have you traveled little? Do you have an interest in travel, or do you have no interest? I am your host, Brittany Jackson. I specialize in personal development and how to live an authentic life leading from your heart. There are so many reasons why I love travel so much. But some of the reasons why I do is that it helps me become a better person by getting out there in the world and experiencing, living, learning, understanding new ways of life and how others believe, how they show up in the world. What are their cultures and beliefs? It helps me open my mind to a new understanding that where I'm from and what I'm used to and how I'm used to doing things is so different in other parts of the world. It helps open my mind to how small my world really is. There's so much out there. I love thinking about how there's people right now all over the world in completely different areas doing completely different things. This world is so wide and expansive. I love thinking that there is so much of the ocean that we don't even know about, that we haven't even explored, and we have no answers to. I love the mystery of life and how expansive our world really is. I also love creating new memories and experiences, and in all of this, I learn more about the people and myself. A little background about where traveling started for me is the first major trip I remember taking was when I was 6 years old. Me, my mom, and my dad went to Florida, and we went to Disney World. I was raised by a single mom. My parents were divorced and separated throughout my upbringing in life, but I am so grateful that they always remained civil and as friends. So I could have a relationship with both of them in my life, and they chose to go on this trip together with me. It is such a great memory I have sharing that with both of them. I would say 6 is a pretty good age to go to Disney World. I definitely remember a lot of that trip and that experience. If you were to go maybe a year or two older, you would still be young enough to get that Disney World feel, but maybe also remember a little bit more than I do. I remember being at Disney World and engaging with all the princesses and Disney characters and going on the ride. I especially remember the Peter Pan ride and also the Drop Tower ride. I was so scared, and I remember my little body floating in the air as the ride dropped. But I remember my parents there with me having a great time and letting me know that everything was okay. I also remember riding around in a convertible, and yes, a bird did poop on my head. I also remember freaking out in the convertible and my parent turning around and wiping it off the top of my head and reassuring me that that meant good luck. I remember hot, warm, sunny days, the ocean and the sand, being in the ocean and a wave knocking me off of my tube and under the water. That moment being scary, as if time stood still. But I do remember one of my parents pulling me up and out, and I was okay, thankfully. So fast forward from that trip, one of my next big trips was going to Niagara Falls with my mom and going out on the boat in the middle of them, being surrounded by all that magic, going to Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum, and just having a great time. The next trip I remember taking was to Colorado. I was in my early teens, and I remember when my mom told me, I was actually kind of surprised. I was like, Colorado? What's in Colorado? I was envisioning an amusement park or somewhere warm and beachy, but she told me about the mountains. Granted, my skepticism was because I'd never seen or experienced anything like that before. I remember the mountains being so big and beautiful, so majestic, and just standing there in awe looking up at all of them, watching waterfalls cascade down the rock. And I remember her driving a manual car on the side of the mountain going up, and we were right next to a cliff, and both of us being pretty nervous about the whole thing. During this trip was also the first time we did a white water rafting trip. And of course, the rapids were pretty small since we were beginners. Being on that boat with so many people, sharing this memory and experience together, looking up and being surrounded by mountains, and the train going by us on the side of the river up on the mountains. I also remember that we were on that train looking out at people whitewater rafting, and some kid randomly got up and mooned us with his bare butt. It's funny the things that stand out to us in our memory from these experiences. In my later teenage years, me and my mom then took a trip to Myrtle Beach. Oh, was that such a wonderful trip. All of the putt-putt places everywhere. We went to so many different putt-putting locations that were all different themes. They were so much fun. And I remember it being so busy that we actually had to wait in a small line before we putted on each hole because so many people were there. We had this condo facing the ocean and just sitting out on the balcony at night, listening to the waves and talking. I remember getting jet skis and jet skiing through the ocean waves together and seeing different sea creatures in the water while we were out on the ocean. It was such a beautiful time and experience. When I got out of high school, I started to do modeling and acting. So with the modeling, I went to different cities throughout the state that I'm in, Michigan, to shoot with different photographers. So I was starting to expand in my own state with different cities, meeting new people, creating throughout art. I also started to work within an agency for the modeling and acting, and that's when I was first introduced to marketing and promotional jobs. I was asked to be an auto show representative traveling on the auto show circuit. When I was first offered this position, I was concerned because I'm like, I don't know anything about cars. And they're like, no, that's great. We just need outgoing spokespeople that will give presentations on stage in front of a live audience about the vehicle, and then also hang out throughout these shows to engage with people and teach them about the cars. We will train you everything you need to know. I thought, wow, this is incredible. I hit the jackpot. I felt so lucky and I felt so professional. I was going to be paid to travel around the country and be able to represent this brand at different auto shows. This is what helped lead me to travel so much within our country. I have been to 33 states. I've been to Arizona, California, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, South Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. There are some debatable states where I had a layover in Washington or I drove through Connecticut, and I am undecided if I count those states or not. I kind of count more going to a state and actually experiencing it or creating a memory there. So we'll see. That's debatable. To be determined. Not only was this work opportunity so great because I was going to get to see so many states throughout our own country, it was also such a great opportunity for the company I worked for and everything they provided for me. They provided my travel, my stay, they would give us spending money, and then I also got paid. But one of the best things about this whole job experience was the way I learned about and discovered myself. I started to travel all by myself domestically within the United States, starting at around 20 to 21 years old. I remember being so excited about this big opportunity, but also so scared and nervous because I had never traveled like this all by myself. But I did have that security where when I got to that state, I was going to meet up with coworkers that I would be working with there. And my first paid trip for work was a work training. So also the company that hired me was going to be there. So I did have a lot of support of who I was accountable to that kept track of me and being able to connect with people while I was there. I remember getting on that flight for the first time all by myself and looking out the window and feeling so good, whole, and fulfilled within myself. I felt like I was doing something big and beautiful, and it meant so much to me. One of my favorite things on all of those travels is sitting up in the plane and looking at all the clouds and the sky and not having any service and being able to check out from my phone in that way and just read a book and be present with the moment of being up in the sky. When I arrived for work in these different states and cities, sometimes I would run into other coworkers at the airport and we would travel to where we were going to together, or I would do all that on my own and then sometimes run into them at the hotel that we were staying at. I love being out on my own and taking care of myself and going out throughout these big cities like New York City, LA. I would walk to the closest grocery store and get things I needed for my work trip. And my work trips did vary. Sometimes they were over a weekend. Sometimes they were up to 2 weeks long. I loved going out and doing things on my own or meeting up with coworkers and going to do things within the city. And I also loved that the hotel always had a gym so I could get workouts in, or I could walk to a local gym to do that as well. I love taking different exercise classes in the big cities. They had so many yoga classes or cycling classes. There's so much available in big cities like that. Of course, all the good food that's offered everywhere. I love visiting a new place and having so many options that you don't normally experience in your day-to-day life or may not even be available where you're from. One of my favorite things I did for myself every work trip is every time I went to New York City or Las Vegas, I would treat myself to a show. In New York City, I went to Aladdin, I went to the Lion King, and I went to the Book of Mormon. I did those things all by myself. And then in Vegas, I had to go see a Cirque du Soleil show every time I went there. I remember going to these shows all by myself, all dressed up, and I remember the ticket person being confused. She was like, "You don't have, anyone to go with? You don't have a date?" And I'm like, "No, I'm with myself." And I loved that, the relationship I built with myself and all the ways that I got to know me through these experiences. Some of the cons that came with this job or this certain type of industry was it did affect any sort of intimate relationships I had because I would be going away for a few weeks at a time. And I knew it was never an issue for me. Like, I didn't care because I enjoyed going on these trips and hanging out with my friends or spending time alone and experiencing all these new things and creating all these memories. But it tended to be more hard for the people I was dating at the time that were at home, not wanting me to leave or missing me or waiting for me to come home. So sometimes travel positions like that can interfere with those kind of dynamics. But I will say that I truly believe that when you live a life that is right for you, the right people will fall into place. Please do not ever change your dreams or quit your dreams to bend yourself to make something work with somebody, to try to fit in this dynamic that they want for your relationship that is not authentically you. Because I do believe that the person who I am meant to be with will support and accommodate, or it may even be complementary to them and how they live their life with how much I love to travel. Of course, it would be great to eventually find somebody that loves and values travel that much too, so we could share that together. One of the hardest things for me personally with traveling so much is having a pet back at home. At the time, I did have my childhood dog that was still alive, but he was in his later years in life. And I did miss a lot of precious quality time that I could have been sharing with him towards the end of his life. He did wait to pass until I came home from a work trip one of those times so I could be there with him and hold him at the vet's office as I had to let him go. But that's the one thing that caused some regret, was missing that valuable time with him. But at the same time, I know that he was loved and well taken care of during the times I was gone. And then also the times I was home, I did give him everything I had. So I'm also grateful that I didn't let go of dreams or things I really wanted for myself just to have that extra time. So just saying that, there are pros and cons to everything that we choose to do, but making sure that we always choose what is truly best for us and what we really want. One of the hard things that can be working in this sort of industry is the consistency. Since I was not always working a Monday through Friday 9 to 5, I could not always calculate my finances that I was going to make throughout that year. So the income can fluctuate from month to month to create some of that inconsistency. I am so grateful for all of the people that I met throughout this working career experience. I met so many incredible people from all around the country. All of my coworkers were from different states and cities, and every time I traveled to go work at a different show, I would work with a different shuffle of coworkers. Some I would see at more shows than others, but they were all so wonderful to work with and get to know. I learned so much about myself through working with them. A lot of my coworkers had been working in that kind of industry for a while, and they helped me know the things to do, the tips and tricks, or some of the great things to do in those areas because they had been there before. A lot of them also traveled internationally all of the time. And at this point in my early 20s, I had never really went out of the country internationally. I did one time when I was around 18 years old, and my high school boyfriend at the time had arranged this sort of cruise ship that we were able to take together from Florida to the Bahamas. While we were in Florida, we did go to the Universal Studios as well, which is so incredible. There was a roller coaster side or a movie side, and we did choose to go to the movie side, which had a lot of really great rides and experiences as well. But he had set up some sort of timeshare thing where we were supposed to go to one of those spiels that they do, and then from doing that, we were able to go on a cruise that they had provided. And so I remember him and I showing up and the person looking at us like, "Why are you here? You're so young." A family member that lived in that area at the time drove us there. And I remember that person looking at that person like, "Are they going to stay? Like, can I talk to them?" And we were like, no, we're here for it, and that person knew we just wanted the free cruise. So the salesperson actually was just like, you know what? Never mind. Like, just go ahead on the cruise, have fun. So we didn't even have to participate in any of that spiel. So anyways, we were on that cruise and we went to the Bahamas and we swam with dolphins. And that was a really cool thing to experience as well at such a young age. And at that time, I was just starting to get into drinking and so forth. So we thought it was so cool that we were able to drink overseas at 18 years old. So anyways, fast forward to these coworkers that did all of this international travel and hearing all of their stories and memories and experiences. I remember thinking that is the most cool, inspiring, amazing thing I've ever heard. I really want to travel internationally too. So then that leads to my first international trip with one of my coworkers. So she is from California and her friends from there were getting married in Italy. So she asked me if I would go with her to be her plus one. I was like, heck yeah, are you kidding me? So I flew from Michigan to meet her in Italy and she flew from California. And we first met in Rome. There was an Airbnb that we went in on, and she also invited a few more of her friends to go in on the Airbnb and the travel stuff that we did there, even though they weren't going to go to the wedding with us. So I traveled all by myself from Italy's international airport to our Airbnb in Rome, and I met them there. That will always be one of my favorite trips I ever went on. I do think that being my first big international trip is definitely part of it, but so many things I loved about there too. I mean, the cobblestone, the beautiful buildings, all of the history. You feel like you're somewhere so beautiful and so important. The locals, they just seem like they're so at peace. They don't seem rushed. They didn't seem in a bad mood. They just seemed like they really lived life in the moment. And they were so natural and authentic. They weren't worrying about putting on any front for anyone. And a lot of the women had natural appearances, weren't really dressed up or just trying to be anything. I remember all of that feeling so different and beautiful to me. Of course, the food is incredible. I mean, I ate carbs and drank wine for about a week straight, and I ended up losing weight while I was there. Granted, we did tons of walking. When we went to that wedding, it was in Florence at the Ritz-Carlton. It was an authentic Indian traditioned wedding. And I remember we were outside and it was raining. And the bride was dressed in these beautiful colors and people were surrounding her in all of these beautiful colored traditional umbrellas. And the yard of where they were getting married at was just covered in beautiful, bright, colorful flowers. I remember just thinking, pinch me, is this real life? And then at the wedding reception, such wonderful food, such a beautiful banquet they had. There was dancing, there was henna, and my mom works at the University of Michigan Hospital, and she actually worked with somebody that had this traditional sari that me and my friend were to wear to the wedding, so we had those to wear too, which was so incredible. I'm so grateful for that experience. While we were in Italy, we also went on this bus tour to see the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and then also some countryside wine vineyards and small villages. Of course, we had to see the Colosseum too, and wow, was that incredible, being in such a major part of history and thinking about everything that has gone on there, all of the people that once stood there in such a different world and time. I loved seeing the ruins that were left all throughout the country and the cities that reminded us so much of where we came from and what once existed before we were there. I remember at one of the nightlife experiences, we ran into these guys that were locals to Italy. And I remember telling them that we were from America and just their eyes getting so big and like, oh my gosh, like all the new and exciting things in New York City. And I remember looking at them like, this is so incredible. Like all the history and that everything isn't always so new and changing and trying to keep up with these unrealistic standards. And that taught me how we have such interest or ideas, whether it's beautiful or not, of what other places are like when they are so different from our own. How much we are conditioned from where we come from and how much we can desire a different way of life or doing things because they are different from our own. I also went on a few more trips with that same friend. We also went on another trip, just her and I, to Aruba, which was so beautiful and yet again, another great experience. We were able to go to this flamingo island and swim and hang out with flamingos. And I also remember these 4-wheel ATV sort of vehicles that we rode over all these rocks and boulders up into the mountains. Of course, I loved the natural swimming pools that we went to swim in and just all the sunshine and beauty. One of the other trips we went on was also with one of our other coworkers. We all went together, the three of us, and our original trip was to go to Ecuador to then go to the Galapagos Islands. But when we had arrived in Ecuador, this was during 2019, there was actually this political issue that they were having where they were trying to overthrow their government and they were going to shut down the airport. So thankfully, one of my friends had a connection in Peru, which is over near that area. And so we were able to go there and leave Ecuador. We did have to try to get some of our deposits back on things we had planned. And we did have to pay for an extra flight to go somewhere else. But thankfully, we were safe and we were able to reroute in this way that brought us to a brand new adventure. When we got to Peru, we hung out in the town of Lima for a while, and that was so cool. They had the scooters available that we scooted around to explore the city. Of course, amazing food. And they had this excursion off the shore where we got to swim with sea lions. I remember us approaching this rock that they all lived at. And like I said, it's in the middle of the ocean, so freezing. And I remember hearing the moans and groans of all the sea lions. It was so intimidating and crazy, as I had obviously never heard anything like that before. So as we got closer, they stopped the boat. We had to wear these wetsuits and put these heater pads that we had in our wetsuits because it was going to be so cold. So we plunge and jump into the freezing cold ocean water, and all of the sea lions come over to us and are swimming all around us. They'd pop their head up right next to us. The smell of fish, oh my gosh, it was so potent. But it was so cool being so up close and personal to these sea lions and having them just pop up anywhere. And it was so beautiful to watch. Our tour guide that clearly goes there all the time had a relationship with them, and they knew him. They were familiar with him. So they got excited when they saw him, and then they would come up and they would swim with him. They would touch him. They were literally like friends. These wild sea lions in the ocean that could go anywhere, free to do whatever they want, and choose to stay there and interact with one of the locals that they had this relationship with. It was so cool. So then, as we're replanning our entire trip in Peru, we decide to hire a local Uber driver that helped drive us to different locations throughout Peru. One of my friends I was with spoke Spanish, so she was able to help us with a lot of this stuff. So we drive to this oasis in the middle of the desert, one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen. We arrived at night, so I didn't understand how big the sand mountains were. And I remember looking up and I was thinking, wow, the sky is so dark. There's no stars in the sky. And then I find myself looking up and up until I'm looking up straight above me and I see all the stars. And then it hit me. The sand mountains are literally that tall. So we went to bed that night. And when we woke up super early to watch the sunrise. We climbed up the sand mountain, which once again, never did it. So I had no idea how much of a workout it was going to be. You would think, duh, but you just don't think about things. So since we woke up at like 4 or 5 in the morning, I like rolled out of bed in my pajamas, not prepared. We hike up this sand mountain as our feet are sinking into the sand and we're trekking up this huge mountain hill. I was so sweaty. I was like, oh my gosh, so early. But once we got up to the top of that sand mountain, I mean, the way the sun looked rising over all of that broad open sand in the middle of the desert, that was one of the most memorable and beautiful experiences I will ever have. I will never forget the way that looked and the way it made me feel. All of that bright orange, all of the gold from the sand and the yellows. Watching that sunrise was incredible. Since we were in the middle of the desert, I did say an oasis because there was a big body of water that the town was surrounded around, which was so cool to see. It really didn't look clean enough to swim in or anything like that, so I'm not exactly sure where it came from or how it got there. So we didn't engage in the water in any way. But we did book this sand bugging adventure where the sand buggy go-kart drove us up and down these huge sand hills. We were going so fast. And of course, I forgot my sunglasses. So all the sand was spraying up in our face in the wind. So I had to be careful to keep my eyes safe and super squinted. But we would stop at the top of the sand mountains, and then we were able to either sandboard or sand sled down, and that was so cool too. You would think that the sand would kick up in your face, but it didn't. It went around us just as snow would. I tended to go down on like my belly on the board, like face first, and oh my gosh, how quick we went. It was such a cool experience. One of the things that was really cool too was at this oasis in Peru. That was actually my first time staying at a hostel too. This hostel was incredible. Everybody was so nice and welcoming. It's just this melting pot of beautiful, amazing people from all over the world that have so many different interests and personalities. It was so cool meeting and hanging out with everybody there at the hostel. It was so clean. They had gourmet food. And also why I'm mentioning all of this is if you're from America like me, you were raised with this movie called Hostel, and oh my gosh, I hate how literal we take movies and how it can taint our perspective of the world because it is so untrue. Of course, I'm not saying that there's nowhere that is like that movie, but it's also like, it's one of those freak accidents or once in a blue moon kind of thing because hostels in a lot of different countries are a lot different than anything that we may think of. So I'm just sharing that to say the way we actually see the world and the reality of what it really is so much more important than these horror stories or lies that we hear being somewhere we've never been. That's why you should always see it for yourself. Don't just take these assumptions or opinions of other people. Even if I somehow on this podcast said something that I didn't prefer or take interest in, that does not mean that you should not go and experience and explore that for yourself. It is so important to experience things in the world for you and create your own understanding and perspective on it because it is so different from person to person. So then fast forward, after this oasis, we went out into this rocky nature area, and it was my first time rappelling down cliffs off of the side of a mountain. And we also rappelled into caves, which was really awesome. We had these headlamps so we could see in the dark. Oh, such a cool experience. And then it was also my first time climbing up the side of the mountains with a rope. I'm not exactly sure what that term is called. I don't know if it's propelling since rappelling is going down, But it was really cool to do that too. We would climb up waterfalls in that way, where we would brace our feet up on the side of the rock and then hold on to the rope and climb using our hands and feet. And we also wore helmets for safety. But I'm just saying, so many of these amazing things that I have never done or I never knew existed, and then being able to do that through these travels and experiences. Once we got up from climbing all of these waterfalls, we also got to slide down a natural waterfall that was like a natural slide. And the rock was so smooth that we all sat down and then slid down into the pool of water that was at the bottom. And then one of the last adventures that we took on this trip was whitewater rafting. And wow, was that so cool, going through the mountains surrounded by tropical flowers. I would say the rapids were a little bit more rough on this one, so that was so cool too. I really love a spontaneous adventure and these once-in-a-lifetime experiences. There was this one area on the river that we were able to pull off of, and then we were able to get out of the tube and like slide into this natural water current where you walk up the side and then you jump into it and it just like pushes you down the river. After this very adventurous trip, we ended our stay at this beautiful hotel resort with a beautiful, clean, relaxing room and a really nice pool that we were able to hang out at. I am so grateful for these coworkers and the experiences that they gave me in my life that I will never forget. Without my one friend doing a lot of the booking and the rerouting, and my other friend that spoke Spanish and was able to help us so easily throughout our trip, I don't know if they'll ever know how much that mattered to me. So I'm just really grateful for the people I met throughout that job I did, all the amazing, beautiful people that introduced me to so many different ways on how to live life and all the different things that we can do. I did go on another trip with these friends domestically. We had went to Lake Tahoe. We went during winter. And it was my first snow trip. Oh my gosh, so magical and beautiful. We snowmobiled throughout the mountains. We stayed at this snowy resort and was in this hot tub surrounded by snow. We would pull over on the side of the road and sled down this mountain with our snow pants, just feeling like free kids again. We would climb these snowy mountains and watch the sunset over all of the glistening white. And we also went skiing down the mountain, which, me not being a professional skier with much skiing experience, it was definitely intimidating, but I'm so grateful on my bravery and my willingness to try new things, trust that all will be okay, and grow and learn and become stronger because of them. My friend, she is like a professional snowboarder that was there. And so she was helping encourage me and giving me confidence, like, you can do it, and celebrating me when I went down the mountain pretty consistently without falling. It just had to take a lot of twists and turns to try to slow down how fast I was going. I remember when I was first going to go down the mountain, I pretty much just threw myself down right away to like get over the fear of it. So I wasn't rippled in anxiety, envisioning the worst things that could happen. And I ended up building confidence and doing better than I thought possible. Some other really cool things domestically within our country that I was introduced to that I wouldn't have went to or knew about if it wasn't for my coworkers' influences was I was working this event in Atlanta, Georgia, and some of my coworkers were talking about how they went to this really cool spa. And it's separated between the men's area and the women's area. And I believe it's like Japanese inspired. So I went there all by myself after a long work weekend. And I didn't originally know that it was a nude spa, even though you were with your same sex. But I was like, okay, hey. So I went. And of course, I'm going through all the things like, oh my God, I don't want to look at anybody. Are they looking at me? This is so weird. But then I eased into it and I paid attention to my thinking. And I'm like, this is only as weird as you are making it to be. I mean, my God, we all were cave people, right? Or like living out in the wilderness. And a lot of people do around the world. They have nude beaches, nude colonies. Like it doesn't have to be this weird thing, right? So trying to view like the nude body in a different way. So I went into like this hot tub or like cool tub area, and I'm hanging out with these other naked women, and they're so relaxed, they're so chill, not making a big deal of this at all. I'm also sharing this to say when you try new things, you can learn and experience new perspectives. Obviously, I am very open and interested to trying all these different experiences throughout different cultures and places of the world. But I understand not everybody is like that or that open-minded, but also just to consider these different things because you never know. Like I said before, all of these things help me grow and evolve into a more open and understanding person. They also did have this area where everybody wears a uniform, and then it's where the men and women can hang out in the shared space. And they had all of these different environment rooms that had different crystals or temperatures that created different experiences through laying in them, like salt caves and so forth. So I went to these different room ambiances to meditate and relax, and it was so incredible. And then at the end of my day at this spa, I got a foot massage that was seriously the best foot massage I've ever had in my entire life. I fell asleep during the massage and I felt so relaxed and incredible on the other side of it. Wow. Like these memorable experiences, right? And this person that gave me the massage, he will never know how memorable, right? That experience really was. So grateful for him. Of course, I have done other things outside of my comfort zone as well, like skydiving. I have skydived 4 times now. My first time was something I always thought about or said I was going to do. And then finally, I just like, okay, you need to rip the Band-Aid off and just do it. And around that time, I decided to try that for the first time. I was trying to build a relationship with God through this transition I was going through in life from being in that party scene and substance use to now being sober. So my first skydiving was a lot about building a relationship and feeling safe and at peace that everything's going to be okay and not ripple effect to all the things that could go wrong or worrying, future tripping, all these things that can really get in the way of us really experiencing and enjoying life. I was so present as we went up in the plane, just really staying in the moment with my breath, how I felt, really staying in the plane or looking up at the sky and not looking down. And then, of course, when we jumped out, and that experience was one of the most amazing experiences in my entire life. Clearly, I've gone skydiving 3 times since. My second time was actually with some friends, and that experience was so cool because as we were falling through the sky with our parachute open, we actually went through the clouds, which you can feel the precipitation and the temperature change. And then also we went through a rainbow. We saw a rainbow. So that was surrounding us as we were slowly, gradually, and softly going towards the ground. And then my third time was over Lake Michigan, which was beautiful. And then my fourth time was actually recent, this past May, and we went to Utah for my birthday. We ended up skydiving over the Salt Lakes and the mountains, which was so beautiful. Speaking of my coworkers and how much they taught me, I had coworkers that did skydiving training in school and skydived solo and also skydived in places around the world, which I have not skydived out of the country yet. I am open and interested in it. And I actually heard one of the most amazing places to skydive at is over the Egyptian pyramids. I mean, wow. Think about that. I can't even imagine. That just sounds so cool. Another cool experience I've done is I went on a hot air balloon ride. I think I was in my early 20s at the time, and I did do that here in Michigan. I remember being really nervous standing on the side of the basket as we were slowly going up and getting higher and higher. But by the time we were up high and I was used to it, I even got so comfortable to the point of sort of leaning over and looking at the earth under us. It was so peaceful, so quiet up there in the sky. And one of the things I learned with that, which I thought was pretty cool, is we went with a group of like 14 people in this basket. I didn't even know that baskets could hold so many people. They were sort of sectioned off by walls because we were very crunched in closely. Another thing that was pretty cool is you can't necessarily predict exactly where the hot air balloon is going to land. So there was this van kind of following us around and trying to predict where we were heading so they could pick us up once we landed. And we ended up landing in these person's yard that, of course, were so excited and came out, and we all worked together to fold up the hot air balloon and everything. So I love getting out and experiencing new things. And I would definitely recommend you do that too, in whatever way calls to you. So I mentioned how I've traveled internationally. I have been to 17 different countries, with counting America. I did go back to Peru as well another time, a few years later from that other time I mentioned, and I went there specifically for a spiritual retreat. I did go a little bit early to go to Cusco, and I was able to see Rainbow Mountain. There is a pretty big difference in the elevation there, so they say to kind of ease into the elevation. And I did not give myself a lot of time to do that. So when I did first get there, I was very nauseous. And then hiking up the Rainbow Mountain, I was short on oxygen and really dizzy. So thankfully, the tour guides had this oxygen tank thing that I was able to do to help keep me oxygenated as I climbed the mountain. But it was so cool to experience all the different colors in the mountain and see that rainbow effect. It was definitely worth it. After that, we had met up with the spiritual retreat individuals, and we were shuttled to the resort that we stayed at in the middle of the mountains. And this spiritual retreat company is ran and created by one of my dearest friends who I love so much. His name's Adam, and his business is called Sacred Sojourners. So please look that up and go on an experience with him because it is so worth it. So at this resort, I met tons of other like-minded people that were also open to self-reflection and growing. We did a lot of meditation and intimacy workshops where we connected through journaling, and we did an eye gazing exercise. And we did this exercise where we listened to what somebody else had to say without giving any sort of response, so we could learn to really hold space for people. And it was just so intimate and beautiful and wonderful. I mean, the food was from this fresh organic farm nearby, and we only ate like vegan, vegetarian. Oh my gosh, it was so wonderful. And then we would have meals together, and they did do these exercises too of like a silent meal where we all ate together and we didn't talk. I mean, just beautiful, wonderful things that you never really try unless you're prompted in this way or at these experiences. So we did go to some excursions. We went to Machu Picchu, of course, which was so magical and beautiful. Being in this old historical city up high in the mountains, surrounded by clouds. We were literally up in the clouds. And then we also went to this spa nearby that was in the rock formations. It had a sauna, like a polar plunge, a steam room, a hot tub. It was so relaxing. And just the friends and the connections I made while I was there, I will never forget. It was so beautiful. We had these like local people that came to share with us their culture and their rituals and belief, which was so beautiful. One of my favorite memories that I'll never forget is laying there on the ground in the middle of these mountains with the people that I grew to love most, looking up and watching shooting stars and just talking about everything and anything. I'm so grateful for such a heart-opening experience. We also did this ecstatic dancing that I love, And we also did this meditation experience that lasted for an hour. There was also sound bath healing that was so beautiful and relaxing to experience from a local musician. And I just can't rave enough about everything I experienced there. So I definitely plan to and hope to go on another spiritual retreat with him and his business in the near future. So back to my country list, another place I went to was China. And you may be thinking, okay, like, I don't know, it's sort of random, right? Well, after I'd seen the Colosseum, seeing all of the world wonders is on my bucket list. So I've always wanted to go to China to look at the Great Wall. I had seen an advertisement of a group trip that was being sold for $500 that included everything: hotel, food, an English translator, shuttles, flights within the country. It even did include flights from our country in America, but I mean, it was like a 48-hour travel trip. So I had went on this trip with my mom and she did pay extra so then we could have more of a direct flight, which had pros and cons. I don't know exactly how long the flight was. I don't know if it was like 9 to 12 hours or something. So she felt like she would have liked a layover to be able to stretch and rest a little bit, but it was also nice just to get right there. China, right, on the other side of the world, so many different cultural experiences there. I mean, the fact that their toilets are on the floor, which is pretty different from America that has more of that seat effect. Just difference in the air quality, I will say. It did seem a little bit thicker in the pollution, where I heard that they only get a few clear days a month, which I don't know exactly how true that is, but it was pretty cloudy while we were there. So I don't know if it was the time of year we went or exactly what, but I will say that was a bummer for me personally going to the Great Wall. It was pretty cloudy that I couldn't see all the way around as I've seen in Google Images where it's so clear and crisp. It was still cool to be in, once again, such a major part of history that has been there so long. And to climb up those stairs, I mean, it took so long. There are so many stairs to go all the way to the top. And we only saw one part of it. I mean, the wall just goes on for miles and miles and miles and miles. So just to see a little portion of that was so cool. I loved how nice everybody was, just so respectful and kind. I loved that stopping at a random gas station, it was always fresh food, nothing that was processed prior or that is unwell for you. It was all so flavorful and nutritional. I also love how welcoming everyone was. I mean, so lovingly, easily brought us into their homes. We also did a tour where we went into this person's home nearby and ate local food that they cook every day in their homes. And that was a really cool experience too. We went to Beijing, Shanghai, and we did stop at some other cities. It's also funny just how you learn and experience different things, like their breakfast is soup and salad and bread, versus in America, we have a lot of sugar, like pancakes, waffles, cereal. So from what I'm used to, it was definitely different going to the buffet and having like soup and salad or fries to choose from. But once again, no right or wrong, just what we're used to. And it's just so cool to me how different places all around the world have what is personal and unique to them. We did experience an incredible show at a local amusement park. So that was really cool to see an amusement park in another country. Since we were on this tour guide experience, I wish that we could have stayed at the amusement park longer than we did, but we had to stay on track with everyone else. And honestly, not being able to speak Chinese or to read any of the signs and things, I really don't know how people go there without these tour guide experiences. So for me, I am grateful that we did have the tour guide to go with that helped us get to and from everywhere and situate everything. I also love how accommodating they are and respectful to guests and being such great hosts that if any problems arise, they do everything and anything to sort it. The one con I would say about this tour guide experience is they did add in a lot of shopping opportunities in there, like going to a local gem store to buy jewelry, going to a tea farm to buy tea, which if you're there to buy things and stuff like that, that's great. But for me personally, I don't really like shopping or spending money in those ways. Like, yes, I may get a souvenir from time to time to remind me of that local place. And I do like collecting this travel art stuff, but I also don't want to do a lot of shopping or spend my money in that way. I'm somebody that personally prefers spending money on experiences. So one of my other trips I had went on was a cruise ship I went on with my family, and we stopped at Mexico. We stopped in Cozumel, which was so gorgeous. We swam in this beautiful blue ocean water, and we took these ATVs into caves and into mud out in the more jungle area, which was so much fun. And then we also stopped at Haiti, which to me, it was like very touristy, where I felt like the locals were sort of putting on a show. We were supposed to go to this very like cultural village, but it was very staged and I wasn't a huge fan of it. But of course, they have beautiful beaches. And then we also stopped in Jamaica. Since we were on a cruise ship, we did stop in more of the touristy areas, which I can't say is my favorite because obviously a lot of the locals want to make their living and try to get you to buy stuff. And like I said, I'm just not that kind of person that prefers to shop in those ways. But we did do an excursion where we drove out a little bit into the jungle and the rainforest. And we went down a river on bamboo rafts that they locally made. And that was so cool to see the nature in that way. So I definitely loved that. One of my favorite trips of all time was also one that I went to with my mom to the U.S. Virgin Islands. Oh my gosh, it was so beautiful. That is definitely the best snorkeling I have ever done in such clear, beautiful blue water. And then we had a condo right on the ocean, which was incredible to be able to go out in the backyard and snorkel anytime. We did go zip lining down the side of a mountain, which was so much fun. And then also the way they drive is so different. We were driving on the left side of the road, which is different than America, but we were still on the same side of the car as you would in America. So not gonna lie, when we actually came back from that trip, I almost forgot for a sec. In America, when I was driving, like I went on the wrong side to us of the road and I was like, oh crap, hurry up and got in the other lane. So definitely be careful of those sorts of transitions that are really different than what we're used to. As I stated at the beginning of this podcast, I have been to Iceland before, so I'm actually going back. So wow, what I love about Iceland is that it's so natural and untouched. It's so underdeveloped. It's got so many different worlds in one. I mean, you feel like you're on this other planet with the way the rocks look, the mountains, there's snow, there's ice, there's glaciers, waterfalls, green lush forests. I mean, it is just incredible there. So the first time we went, we got a camper vehicle where there's a tent on the top of the car, and then we just brought dehydrated food and a pot that we boiled water in. And that's how we ate on the road because there's only so many cities or places to go to, and we wanted to see a lot of nature. I did do some photo shoots there, like I said, is the cover of my podcast title. And we do plan to do more photo shoots there this next week, which I'm really excited for. I love creating beautiful art in that way, and I have beautiful dresses to wear. But I love how safe Iceland is. It's one of the safest countries in the world. And once again, like one of those melting pots where people from all over the world go there. The camper van style is so common. There's so many nice, clean campgrounds. And just meeting so many different people and hearing all their different languages and accents, I just love it so much. Of course, they had natural heated pools and rivers that we went to. And I swear, one of my favorite things was seeing the glaciers, and it's called Crystal Beach, and just having these ice sculptures so naturally on this black sand, so clear and blue and beautiful, and watching the seals swim around there in the bay. And yes, we actually got to see some whales too when we were driving by from the side of the road and watch them, which was really awesome. We also hiked up a glacier and were able to drink water right off of the mountain, the cleanest, most clear, fresh water you could ever imagine. And then we ended this really adventurous, beautiful trip with a great day at the spa. We went to the Sky Lounge that had all these different experiences, from the steam rooms to the sauna to the cold plunge to this scrubbing experience of exfoliating with these great smells. And then also the natural heated pools that had this infinity wall that overlooked the ocean, and we were able to watch the sunset. I mean, just incredible. Now going back to Iceland, this time we are going to do the camper van thing again and see different areas of the country. Last time we were there, we did the ring road that went around the whole country. And now this time we plan to do the Golden Circle and see the Western Peninsula. We did see that a volcano erupted there just yesterday, so we're really hoping that that is still going over the next few days, so we can see that when we get there. We also plan to snorkel over these tectonic plates in the clearest water in the world. And then we also have this experience where they bake bread in the ground, which I'm super excited to see how that works and taste. Of course, it's supposed to be so fresh and good. The locals are really welcoming there, and Reykjavik, which is their big city there, is definitely one of the nicest and clean cities I've ever seen in my entire life. Some of the other countries I went to was Ireland, France, and England. And I'm saying those in a set because I went on a travel experience where I went to each place for 3 days. So I first went to Ireland and got a rental car. And that is driving on the opposite side of the vehicle, on the opposite side of the road. So that was just so cool to experience. But we drove to the Cliff of Moher, which was really beautiful. And we stopped at a sea village that was really colorful. And we did explore Dublin. On our drive, we did see a lot of castles. I love that they kept the history of what was, even how it is now today. And then from there, we went to England, which was so cool to be in another country that speaks English, just with a different accent. I will say that it was pretty rainy and gloomy there while we were there, which I do hear is actually kind of common, but it was a really great city and so many just interesting and amazing people from all over the world. What I really love about Europe is how important and common travel is. Everyone throughout Europe not only travels all around the world, but they definitely travel a lot within Europe. So I was able to get a lot of suggestions and ideas for future trips. We also went on an excursion outside to go see Stonehenge, which is one of the biggest mysteries as well on how those rock formations got there and the history behind it. Then after the UK, we flew over to France to go to Paris, which, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to go to Paris. The Eiffel Tower is so freaking worth it. Like one of the most incredible things I had ever experienced. We did go there in the day to climb up it and see it and look at Paris from the very top. But we also did go on a nighttime dinner cruise that went along the river kind of nearby the Eiffel Tower so we could see it lit up at night. I mean, wow, how magical and beautiful. The dinner boat experience was so wonderful too. Of course, we went to go to so many places with good food and we got massages. There are a lot of rumors and controversy about Paris. I am not really sure why that is. I will say that during the time we were there was some striking going on of some of the local transport industries, like the train or the garbage trucks. So the garbage was left there unpicked up because of the strike, but that's not a normal thing there. The people there were so welcoming and kind. I'd also heard about rumors of the locals there being really rude to foreigners and tourists, and I didn't get any of that at all. I have been so grateful on all of my travels and everything that I've experienced that I haven't experienced any bad things or negativity like that. And I am going to knock on wood because God forbid, right? I hope that never happens. But I just really feel like if you look for beauty in the world and you expect the best from people and you're in a really great place within yourself, you are going to attract that and bring that out in others. So that may be also why my experiences have gone so well with that. I would definitely recommend Paris. I am bummed since we were only there 3 days. We couldn't really see much else of France, but I would love to go back and see more because I've heard so many great things about their countryside. I also want to mention that I did go on a trip to the Dominican Republic and I did stay in a resort there. So I did find that trip on Groupon and I booked it because it was a good deal. And the beach and the resort was just incredible. I mean, the food, they had peacocks all throughout, which were really cool to see and experience all their different colors. And then we did go on an excursion nearby where we jumped down waterfalls. So you just go up to a waterfall and then you jump into the water underneath it and you kind of float down the river and do that from waterfall to waterfall. So that was really cool too. So now we're down to the last country I have to cover, which is Canada. I don't have a lot of experience with Canada. I did mention the Niagara Falls when I was younger. And last fall, I did go on a cruise that stopped up through Canada because I went during the fall leave change time. But honestly, the stops we stopped at in Canada weren't that great, and we were only there for a very short period. There are tons of other places I would love to see in Canada, like Banff National Park, so I definitely hope to explore more of Canada in the future. Some of the important messages that I've been touching on throughout sharing my travel experiences with you were obviously the cultural differences I learned about and experienced that help open my mind. Another thing I forgot to mention is in Peru, a lot of the country is in more poverty or underdeveloped than I'm used to in the United States. So there was a lot of small local villages where a lot of people never leave those towns. And then also they're surrounded by dirt mountains and they have small little homes with maybe one light in them and no running water that they have to carry buckets of water up to. And they don't have cars. I remember someone making a comment that in America, we have houses for our cars, which they meant garage. So just so grateful for how much we really do have available here in the United States that you don't really understand the fullness of until you go to more undeveloped parts of the country like this. But what I did love is how community-based they are. I mean, they all get together within their town and they make sure to play games together or play sports like soccer after work and really connect with one another. That's something that we're really missing in America that I wish we had more of. And then also, I remember us driving through a small town and the streets were packed of people and pictures and they were carrying a casket. And I remember us asking our Uber driver, what is going on? Like, why is the street so crowded like this? And he explained to us that these people never leave their town. So they are all literally like family. So when somebody dies, it becomes a big event for everyone to come together. And that was one of the most beautiful and incredible things I'd ever seen, was watching all of these people come together in this way to grieve and celebrate the loss of someone they loved and had known their whole lives. That's how close these communities are. And that's something that I definitely take with me, the values and understandings that I received from that. Also with being patient and adaptable, like I had mentioned that one trip that we had planned for Ecuador and then all of the plans changed or went wrong. So then we had to go to Peru, but it still ended up turning into one of the most incredible trips and experiences of my life. and I am so grateful. It became everything that it was supposed to be. So if you hit a roadblock on your travel like that, please just be open and calm and adaptable. All will be okay. I will mention another thing that I had went through was actually in Italy. We were going from Rome to Florence on a train, and we did not know how quick the trains are. You have to know your stop is coming up and be ready at the door with all your bags because they open it. You have literally maybe a minute to get out and they shut it. We did not know that. So we were on the train sitting, and as the train was stopping, we start getting up and our things around. And by the time we have all our things and are approaching the door, only one of our friends got out of the train out of the four of us, and three of us got shut into the train, the door shut. So not only was our one friend outside like, oh my God, what's going on? And we were like, oh no. And then the train just started going, and there's nothing that we could have done until we got to the next stop. We had to buy another ticket, and then we had to backtrack. All ended up being well, but I'm just saying these things will happen in their own ways on your adventure as you go on these trips, and I promise you all will be okay. We can shift those things to a positive. Like at that time, it's like, oh well, there's nothing we can do. We've learned now. We've learned how quick we have to be on the trains here in Italy. And we also get to see more of the country now by going further on the train than we plan to, right? Like, oh well, that's okay. That's a part of the journey and the story. And now I have something to share from my experiences to learn from and share with others. Some of the top places I suggest for you to go to and why is definitely the US Virgin Islands or British Virgin Islands, any of the Virgin Islands out that way, just because the water is so incredible and it has the best snorkeling. So definitely go there and check it out. Definitely Italy, just because of the cultural beauty. I mean, I loved it so much. What an incredible place to be. And then within here in America, some of the places I would recommend is definitely Maui in Hawaii. I mean, just wow, that is so beautiful there. All the tropical, the rainbows, the ocean, the beaches. We actually got a camper van there as well, and then traveled around the island and just stopped wherever we wanted, snorkeled, woke up anywhere we wanted. I mean, it was just beautiful. And then also within our country, another place I love city-wise is Austin in Texas. I just love how hipster and I love how passionate Texans are about being Texans and just how welcoming they are. I mean, me only being there for so long, I would have people welcome me into their houses for dinner. I mean, just so hospitable. And then, of course, when it comes to mountains and the beauty with that, I definitely say Colorado or Oregon. There's definitely a lot of the country I haven't seen yet, which I really hope to, like Washington, definitely Wyoming, Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota. I can't wait to experience all of that. One thing I want to mention about my travel experiences too is I did live out of an RV for a few years, and I did travel the country living out of that. And the reason why I did that at the time is since I was traveling so much for work, I wanted something that felt like a home on the road that I could take with me to all these different work opportunities. But I did end up selling it, and that had fallen through around the COVID time. Just a lot shifted in my life. So I do hope to invest in another motorhome again in the future, and time will tell if I can see the rest of the states in that way again. I'd have to say between international or domestic travel, I do tend to prefer international just because there's so many different cultures and countries that I want to see and experience. I have been able to see the majority of America, even though there's a lot I would still like to see and experience. So I guess my interest feels more into other countries and all the things that will be offered for me to learn and experience. I have also mentioned that I have traveled a lot of different ways, out of camper vans, at a resort, cruises, booking online packages I see, booking individually based on planning. And I really can't say I have a favorite. I think I prefer booking more individually and not being part of groups in that way, just because you are on their schedule and time and have to do whatever the group has planned. But like I said, there's certain places of the world that I also don't know how I would travel in that way without that. So definitely pros and cons. I do love travel deals. I did take a travel deal to go to Ireland, France, and England. But like I said, I was only there 3 days in each place, right? So that was the con of that, is it was a package deal, but it was trying to scrunch in a bunch of stuff to do in a small amount of time, which I do prefer to go to a place and spend more time and really get to experience that. And then cruise ships, I did do the cruise in the cooler months up to Canada, and I didn't care for that as much as I did like the tropical cruise that went to Haiti and Jamaica and Mexico. But, I also think like a winter Alaskan cruise would be really cool that I'd be interested in at some time. So I also just think it depends. What are you feeling like? What do you want to experience? I don't feel like there's a right or wrong way to travel. If you don't have as much to explore, like I was in the US Virgin Islands, I liked that we had a condo and a hub to go back to and then just go out and explore time to time from there. But then when there's places like Maui or Iceland, when I want to see so much of those places, I loved having that camper van option where it could be so flexible. Some safety tips that I have for you is definitely just be aware of your surroundings. Don't be on your phone or distracted. Definitely look at people in the eyes and the face and smile, right? Like be kind, let them know that you see them. I so far have preferred to travel with people. It does make me feel more safe. Am I interested in solo travel at some point? Yes. I do see other women do it and it's very inspirational. It may even be a thing where I meet up with people, right, that I don't really know, or I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about that yet. I'm open to understanding, learning, and exploring more. The only solo trips I've done is within my own country or meeting friends in another country, but not being solo that whole time. Also, what helps me with safety is I don't drink or do drugs. And so it's definitely concerning for me for people that do that and will participate into those substances around people they don't know in environments they're not familiar with, taking things from people they don't know. I mean, do those things at your own discretion, but I would just be really cautious and aware of that. Some places on my travel dream list is definitely safari, 100%, way up there. I love animals so much, and I hate seeing them confined in zoos and small environments outside of their natural environment in the United States. So I would love to see them where they really belong and where they're really from. Another place is the Egyptian pyramids. I mean, it just seems incredible there. Like I said, all the magic and history of how are the pyramids made, right? Like there's so much we still don't understand. I would also love to see Thailand. I hear how affordable it is and how beautiful. I would love to engage with the elephants in some way. I am not very picky when it comes to travel. I could probably go on and sit here and share with you all the places I really want to go, but I would say those are at least some of the top 3. Some advice I have for listeners that want to travel and that they haven't much is to do it. Do it, do it, do it. One of the best things I heard is that we can make back money, but we can't get back time. So really, please do it. Get out there, live life, experience these new things that will teach you more about yourself and life and other people. For those of you that maybe aren't interested in travel and have never really did it, I mean, for one, I'd be surprised if you're still listening at this point. But what I would say to you is open your mind and try something different. Even if it's locally, nothing too big, it's just get out there and do something different. I just think it's so important to get out of our comfort zones because that's where we grow. And when we let loose and we trust the world, our environments, and other people, we become more well-rounded and also have a more positive and beautiful perspective about life. Last night, when I was writing the outline for this podcast, I got emotional And you did hear me get emotional when I was talking about the friends and the people I met that helped me experience these things that I will never forget. And the reason why I'm just so emotional is because this means so much to me, and it's such a beautiful part of my life and experience, and it's something that I prioritize so much to continue to do it throughout my future. I want to end today's episode with some affirmations, so you can say these to yourself or repeat them out loud. I want to challenge myself to get out of my comfort zone and experience something I've never experienced before. I believe life is beautiful, safe, and abundant. When I travel, I will go to somewhere I will really enjoy and make really great memories. Now, I would like to say a prayer for you. God, I pray for the listener that if they have never traveled before and they want to, that they get the courage, that they believe in themselves to get out of their comfort zone and try something different, and that they get the funds that they need to be able to do it. I believe in you, and I pray for your abundance and that you will rejuvenate any money that's spent on things that we really want in life. And for the person that is not interested in travel, I pray that they open their mind to willingness to just try and do something different, even if it's a city out of their comfort zone nearby, so they can learn and grow about themselves and about other people and ways of life. I also pray for the person that loves to travel and can't get enough, maybe has traveled a lot, like me. I pray that they continue to do and prioritize what means a lot to them, and they continue to create amazing and unforgettable memories and experiences that will last with them till the end of their life. Memories are so important. They are so unreplaceable. Amen. Wow, there was so much to share with you here in this episode. It was way more than I thought. I should have known with how passionate I am on this subject. So if you stuck through all the way, wow, thank you so much. Please share this episode with somebody that you know that loves travel or is interested in travel. And please let me know what your thoughts are. Where have you been? Where would you like to go? Did you learn anything from this podcast? I love your engagement. By the time I record and share with you the next episode, I will be back in the United States, and I am so excited to see what topic arises at that time. So until then, live well and be happy.